last time, right.
Hmm.
Last time we were talking about the staff cottage where I was posted
Hmm.
and a few changes that I had managed to get done.
Right.
We had in the staff cottage a number of speakers coming to talk to us.
Okay.
You see, in a 1 year's course, besides the various instruction and exercises, both on the ground as well as in the inside the classrooms, we had every month about 2 or 3 speakers coming and addressing all the students
Hmm.
and the directing staff and the commandant. Everybody used to be present in a large hall,
Hmm.
and they to cover any subject.
Okay.
So the point is, in the development of the military officers or the leadership quality of the military officer is not confined to only the military business.
Hmm.
He has to learn about the culture of the country.
Hmm.
He has to learn about humanity. He has to learn about what are the associations of human societies vis-a-vis the geography in which they live. What is the question of resources available all over the world
Hmm.
and the struggle to get hold of these
Okay.
resources?
Of course.
What is the political system in various countries?
Hmm.
And what is the industrial capability of a nation and hence its intrinsic economic strength of or weakness? So, in this study, besides our own studies, as I said, we had a large number of speakers, including top communist leaders. For example, I'll just give you 1 or 2 examples. We had Mr. Nambudri Pad, the top communist leader. He used to be chief minister of Kerala at one
Yes.
stage. He came and spoke to us. And, the speaker is supposed to speak for an hour maximum.
Okay. Okay.
Then we have about 30 minutes for questions and answers by the students.
Hmm.
And then we all prepare to go and have a cup of coffee or something. Now, Mr. Nambudripad spoke very well indeed. And he spoke and he spoke and he spoke and he wouldn't stop. With the result that he took the whole 1 hour and 35 minutes.
Hmm.
Eventually, the commandant interjected and said, Mr. Speaker, you were supposed to speak for 1 hour.
Yes.
But I don't know what the communist training is. Perhaps you
Hmm.
speak more than you
Hmm.
should. The fact is that you've spoken for a whole a question answers also.
Hmm.
And now it's time for a coffee break.
Yes.
Staff college has to function on strict timings because everything is based on timings there. So Namidri said, I'm sorry, but anyway, I have got the time. So if you can cut into your coffee break a bit and you can raise a few questions.
Hmm.
So one of our student officers got up. He says, I have a question. He says, Mr. Nambudripad, you spoke so well about communism
Hmm.
and the question that all human beings should be equal.
Hmm.
I'm thoroughly impressed.
Hmm.
I would like to become a communist.
Okay.
And so I've got a scooter
Huh.
which I possess. I can give you my scooter
Huh.
because in communism, the state must own everything. If you don't own anything yourself, so I give you, I hand over my scooter.
Huh.
So I'd like to be a communist. How do I do that?
Huh.
So Mr. Namudri but spoke. He said, this is a major speaking. He said, Major, I'm a politician
Hmm.
and I speak my theme depending on my political interest.
Okay.
Don't get too uh, taken up
Oh.
with communism, anything. I don't want your scooter. You keep your scooter.
Huh.
Think about things carefully. You're in the military, and if you become a communist, they'll throw you out. So I suggest
Huh.
you shouldn't, at your stage, since you're an army officer, you should
Huh.
not try and get too excited with what the politicians tell you.
Huh.
Just shows to you how effective that speaker was. Another speaker came, I forget his name, but he was a master of what's the subject? Uh, Humanity, how it functions, how they get married, how they have children, and so on.
Okay.
A demographer. A demographer is a person who sees how populations function and in what way they develop, and therefore what is the state of their country over a period of time. So he spoke for about an hour, and then we were having various questions and answers. And on that also he said, look, for instance, I am a South Indian.
Okay.
He was a South Indian from Tamil Nadu. He says, I'm a dark looking man. But my wife that's sitting over there, she's golden haired and blue eyed. She's from America. So he says, my point is that eventually North India and South India and East India and West India should all get intermarried. And then Indians should get intermarried with everybody else in the world so that we have no conflict. Even in ancient times, one of the methods of stopping conflict was for a marriage. You get married to the princess or something, and the king of this side and the princess of that side, and they call it quits. And because now they're in-laws and outlaws, there's no fight. So he said, if the whole world, instead of being black and white and brown, becomes khaki in color, there'll be no conflict. Now, if you look at the countries in the world today, India is a mixed country. It has all colors, all types of shapes and sizes of the humanity that lives in this country. So is America. But the Chinese are exclusive. The Chinese, for instance, they all speak one language. They all, of course, if you go to the southern Cantonese Chinese, a bit shorter in height. But if you go to the northern Manchurian and that area, northern China, they're much taller and perhaps darker. They are very good warriors also. But culturally, they're just one community. If you look at Russia, again, it is one community. This is a Slav community. And they are very beautiful people, no doubt, but they don't mix it too much. In America, you see blacks and whites and browns and, a mixture of people all over the world. Now, Britain and France and the European nations were originally exclusively white, but because of the lack of enough children, they've had to import people to carry out labor, to run the trams and the buses and the taxis and to clean the streets and, the scavenging and all that sort of thing. They start like that, and then they get married, they have children, so they become citizens of that country. France, for instance, draws most of its people for this sort of work from Algeria and North Africa. And if you take the Swedish, the Scandinavian countries and Germany, for instance, they are drawing these people mostly from Turkey, who are Muslim. Now, these communities that come in Britain also, you have mostly from the erstwhile Commonwealth, people coming into Britain. There are all shapes and sizes. I recollect having visited London on a course of instructions, as I told you earlier, when I was a major in 1965, where it was pointed out to me that every fifth man or woman that you meet on the Bond Street or Regent Street, which are high-end streets in London, every fifth or sixth man will be brown or black or whatever, non-white. But if you go to Britain today, every sixth or eighth man is white. The rest are all colored. So you notice how communities, when they get mixed, they become a different breed of nation. And the communities that are exclusive, they do try and retain the exclusiveness. So this is the demographer explained all this. And he said, if you want to reduce conflict, it should be a khaki race all over the world with everybody mixed up. If He said we should start with India, with north, south, east, west, and all that. I've set the example. You guys get on with it. These are some of the interesting lectures one heard. There are all sorts of subjects. I won't go into it because we don't have the time. Just to show you that it's a wide-ranging education that you get for 1 year at a major captain level at the Defense Services Staff College. Now, anyway, I had done my year and a half or so there. In 1971, some war clouds were coming up because, there was a huge amount of refugees that had come into India from East Pakistan, from East Pakistan into West Bengal and into Assam. Eventually, they were considered to be about 10 million refugees. And these are figures which are unheard of in Europe or anywhere else. If you see all the refugees from Ukraine, they hardly muster 1 or 2 million. 10 million. And we were very lucky at that time that we had very staunch leaders in both the politics as well as the military. We had Sam Manekshaw as the army chief, and we had Indira Gandhi as the Prime Minister of India. Defense Minister was Dalit by the name of Jagjeevan Rao. He was a horrible-looking man. I mean, he had a broad face, and if you see his ears, his hair sticking into the ears about 2-3 inches on both sides. But then he was the defense minister, and he had 2 or 3 girlfriends who were all white. But nonetheless, he stood his ground very well. I think he's one of the better defense ministers of this country, and he was during the war. You had your Home Minister Chavan from Maharashtra, who later did very well also. Very good team Indira Gandhi had. And Sam Manekshaw was her personal selection as the chief, and they were 1-to-1. Right since the time she was a little girl, about 16 years old, and Sam was a brigadier, used to accompany her father and her in tours abroad. They knew each other personally. We were lucky with that. Because if the relationships between politicians and bureaucrats and the military is very close and coordinated, much can be achieved. So at that stage, Indira Gandhi wanted to take action to get these 10 million refugees back to East Pakistan. But the Pakistan army was on a rampage there. They were killing people left, right, and center. They were raping all the women, doing horrible things. They started with the Hindus, but carried on with the Muslims also. So we had refugees who were Hindus and Muslims who ran away from there and came into, as I said, to Assam and into Bengal, West Bengal. Now, for a country like India, which is not very well off financially, to also manage 10 million extra refugees for their food, their clothing, their putting them into camps was beyond our resources. So Indira Gandhi went all over the world, dressed very beautifully in a lovely sari. She went to France, she went to Britain, she went to Soviet Union, she went to America. Nixon was the president, pleading with them that get the United Nations to help me with refugee funds so I can feed these people. I don't have the money. And tell Pakistan to stop rampaging the whole of East Bengal so that these refugees come to a halt and are accepted back in that country, because we cannot accept these extra millions in India. Unfortunately, though she was given a good hearing in the Soviet Union, as far as Nixon was concerned and his Secretary of State, the famous, what's his name? I'll just tell you his name. Henry Kissinger.
Oh, of course.
He written huge books. I've got them lying here.
Right.
Master thinker and a master manipulator. He's the man who assisted Nixon in getting friendly with the Chinese and break up the 2 communist nations of Russia and China, of the Soviet Union and China, so that they could deal with them separately. And he used Pakistan for that. So anyway, Nixon called Indira Gandhi the bitch. which is recorded in his, he used to keep on recording whatever he said, which is available in documents and in tape recording and so on. He's a man with every sentence, there was a nasty word in every sentence that he spoke. It's amazing how a president of the United States should speak so badly that any sensible person listening to him would be put off, because every sentence has an expletive. So anyway, as you know, Nixon's history, he came to grief later. But whatever it is, the Americans were supporting Pakistan in all circumstances, and they were not going to support it. That was clear. So what Indira Gandhi did was that she had a secret agreement with the Soviet Union. I'm giving you the overall picture before I come down to the actual 71 war itself. She got a treaty signed with the Soviet Union for the defense of India or of Soviet Union, whoever was attacked. Second point was that in case she decided to take military action against East Pakistan, then she expected Soviet Union under this treaty to come to her aid by preventing the United Nations from coming to a decision against India. That means with American influence, what happens in the United Nations and the Security Council is that the Soviet Union and these 5 countries who were the victors of World War II, the nuclear nations, have the veto. Therefore, the Security Council, if there is a decision to go against India because it is thinking of attacking Pakistan, the Soviet Union could use the veto to stop that. But if the veto is done 2-3 times, then it is the option of Security Council read by the US to go to the General Assembly of the United Nations and pass a vote. And there again, countries vote according to what's good for them, depending on what are their relations with the United States vis-a-vis the Soviet Union in those days. So we knew that if we went to General Assembly, then maybe the vote would go against India, and then you might find UN troops coming against India if that decision is made. So the question of freedom to act militarily, it required the veto of the Soviet Union and assistance of Soviet Union. So that's she achieved that. This is politics and diplomacy. Now, having done that, she told General Manekshaw, who was then general, later became the field marshal, to say that you better attack Pakistan first. That was in April 1947. April 1971. That was the time I got posted out from Staff College. I was promoted to the rank of full colonel. And I was ordered to go to as Colonel GS, that's the right-hand staff officer of the 1st Armored Division, which was then commanded by Major General Gurbachan Singh, who's known as Butch, B-U-T-C-H, Butch. And now, if you recollect, Butch knew me very well because when he was a major, he was commanding a gunnery school in Armored Corps Center and School, and I was a captain under him. And we disagreed on many occasions, but I proved myself right and him wrong. So he took a liking to me because I could talk and prove my views. So then the Armored Division, he wanted a Colonel GS and war clouds were coming. So he said, get Sharma here. So I was posted as Colonel GS to the 1st Armored Division. General Butch was the Army Headquarters Reserve of Sam Manekshaw, and he was very friendly with Sam Manekshaw. So they had a one-to-one, and if he wanted something important which Sam could help him with, he arranged that. But the problem here, Nivedita, was that all my colleagues from the Indian Military Academy who were my classmates, they were promoted to brigadier, whereas I was only promoted to full colonel. So R.K. Ranjit Singh, Major General Ranjit Singh, who was commanding the Staff College, he spoke to me and I said, look, I think I've been superseded. He said, that's impossible. You are a very top of the line officer, and how can you be superseded? I said, I don't know, but I've been made a full colonel, whereas everybody else is becoming a brigadier. And they're commanding brigades during the 71 war, in case it comes. Meanwhile, I have been posted as Colonel GS of the 1 Armored Division. So he checked up. He said, yes, you have been superseded. You passed the colonel's board, but you didn't pass the brigadier's board. All right. So the elder brother of my friend, Jagat Vora, who was from the Armored Corps, the Deccan Horse, elder brother was a major general. He had done the colonel's board and he met me somewhere. He said, look, have you had a heart attack or something? I said, no.
Mm.
You are top of the line officer. We got through to full colonel. So how is it that you didn't make brigadier? I said, I don't know. We have no knowledge of this. And now, when you are set back like that you're superseded in your promotion, the first person whom you have to face is your wife. Because many the wives get so upset that here you are supposed to be a good man and top class, and I married you and all that. What the hell happened to you? You got left behind.
Uh,
So I used to advise all officers who were superseded that look, get your wives under control.
uh,
So I told Surubi, look, old girl, I'm sorry, I've been superseded. She said, that's all right. Let's enjoy your life. So she took
oh.
it very well. And my advice to all officers after that is if your wife is on your side, then you can face the problem, whatever it is. Much better than if she gets antagonistic because she thought that you were a good chap, that she married. She says, I got hold of a much better fellow than you because you got left behind. So with that, I reported to Jhansi with my wife. We given a very good house straight away. Received with great welcome and aplomb because General Butch knew me very well.
Mm.
In the headquarters, my predecessor was Colonel Baman Irani.
Okay.
He was from the Armored Corps, 7th Cavalry, I think. And he had been a brigade major of the 1st Armored Brigade in 1965,
Okay.
where my regiment was involved in some problems, and we did not appreciate the way this brigade headquarters handled us incorrectly, and we got very worried and antagonistic about the subject. So Baman Irani is a very good man as a human being, very truthful. The problem with him was that he wasn't assertive. You've got to be assertive also, especially when you think something is right, you have to assert yourself.
Mm-hmm.
If something went wrong, for instance, he take the blame rather than find out who is at fault and sort that chap out. That was his problem. So General Butch wanted to get rid of him before the war, so he pushed off, and I replaced him.
Okay.
And there was a lieutenant colonel of the signals commanding the signal regiment called Bunny Kapoor.
Mm.
He was a top class signals officer. He's about a year junior to me. And he was very, very good in staff work also. And so General Butch had been using him to do much of the work of the Colonel GS. Anyway, when I came, I took all that over.
Mm.
And General Butch decided to put Bunny Kapoor in charge because when you go to battle,
Okay.
the general would have his separate little headquarters away from the main division,
Okay.
where his commanders would be able to talk to him directly. So that was the arrangement that was made. So Bunny Kapoor was in charge of what is called his track group. Track because he's on tracks, on tanks, along with some B vehicles. So the general officer commanding his track group was looked after by Bunny Kapoor, looking after all their signals and communication, plus giving instructions as per the requirements of the general officer. And I, meanwhile, was handling the rest of the armored division. That was the way it was working. Now, when we reached Jhansi, there were a number of problems I found. Since we were likely to go into war in a few months,
Mm.
uh, this is in April 1971, uh, we had to get this armored division ready for war. Now, the armored division had 4 tank regiments, which were, sorry,
Yes.
Vijayanta tanks, made in India. It's a Vickers tank, made in India. It had certain problems. We found that when you run the tank about 40 kilometers, the sprocket which changes the, just a minute. The sprocket is in part of the track system. The engine drives the sprocket like this.
Okay.
It's at the back of the tank, and the whole track goes over wheels to
Okay.
make it move. So we found that the sprocket was wearing out and slipping off.
Oh.
So I got hold of the lieutenant colonel
Oh.
in charge of the EME, that's the electrical mechanical engineer, a very interesting officer called John Mathai. I said, John, what are we going to do about the sprocket? He says, I have been posted in Avadi, which is producing the tank, South India. I'll go and get more sprockets from there. So we sent him off to Avadi, the tank factory. He came back with 300 sprockets.
Oh, bless you.
And we got our tanks on road. The result was that the production of tanks in the factory stopped because there were no sprockets. So this came back from Army headquarters, and a Major General from the EME, from Army headquarters, came to sort us out. Meanwhile, I asked John Mathai to find out why these sprockets were wearing out. It's a Vickers tank made in England. So I suggested to him, you cut a piece of that sprocket metal, send it to UK, because any test in India is not good enough. Send it to the Vickers factory in England, and tell them, look here, you're the chap designed this tank, it's a useless sprocket, it's wearing out. Why? So we sent this, and meanwhile the answer came from the UK that these sprockets are being made in India.
Oh.
And since you farmed out the production of sprockets to various Indian companies, they're not using the correct alloys. They say that they use the correct alloys and the cost is that much. Instead, they put false alloys inside, with the results to get more out. That just goes to show to you that when you make in India, there's a lot of cheating and a lot of corruption, because instead of doing the correct materials with which you have to produce a hard metal substance which won't wear out, you are cheating by that, and they're cheating not only by the company, but those who accept. Well, I'm talking of 1971. I hope things have changed by now, because Mr. Modi is trying to do the Make in India, and we have to be very careful of the inspection that we do if private companies and others are producing spare parts and materials for our military services. There's a lot of corruption, and this corruption has to be prevented. Otherwise, there's a serious lack of efficiency of any equipment when you go to battle. Anyway, this Major General from the Army headquarters came to Jhansi. He came to my office, a very, very smart officer. And he was considered in the AME and a top-class brain. And he was very angry with us, all of us. His face was all red. He came into my office, I want to see the general. So people had to come to my office because the general was busy. And my office was next to the general. So I said, general is busy, he's got somebody there. So you sit down, have a cup of coffee, cool it. Let's talk. I said, why are you so angry? He said, because you people have cheated. You sent this piece to England
Mm.
to check out the way it is constructed. And now you're blaming us for not having constructed it correctly in India.
Mm.
How dare you show the faults of India to a foreign country?
Oh.
So I said, just a minute.
Huh.
Why have you created the fault in the first place?
Huh.
It's all very well to be sensitive about other countries knowing that you're a bloody idiot, but why are you an idiot?
Huh.
I was only a colonel, he was a major general. He said, you are speaking very rudely to me. I said, yes, you deserve it. Because you come here trying to sort us out for having sent something to England, but you're not sorting out the reason why it was sent.
Mm.
I said, no Indian establishment or laboratory is going to give us the correct result because your people are cheating.
Mm.
So I'll tell the general what I think about you before you go and meet him. So I walked in when the general was free. I said, this joker from the EME is trying to bullshit us and he needs to correct the way you're producing our tanks. So General Cast called him in and we could hear the shouting from about 20 yards away inside that office when the general sorted him out and told him to go get lost.
Mm.
Now, why I brought this incident is that uh, in the military, you must have good weapons, otherwise you kill your soldiers.
Yeah.
If your equipment fails in battle,
Right.
your soldiers die.
Right.
So whether it's a rifle or whether it's a gun or whether it's a tank or whether it's an aircraft,
Mm.
it must not fail.
Mm.
So we do hope
Mm.
that that is going to be corrected. I'm sure it will be over a period of time. But this corruption has to be
Mm.
curtailed for it to be successful. Now, we managed to get our tanks on road, but there's serious problems with the Vedanta tank because the way the British had designed it, all the dust from the desert sands of Thar Desert of India
Mm.
were getting into the engine,
Oh.
and the air cleaners were not efficient enough to handle that.
Mm.
With the result, the engine would get seized. You know, you get when sand enters the engine and the filters that are supposed to prevent the sand from entering are overwhelmed.
Mm.
And sand gets inside the pistons and the pistons get bad and the power of the engine goes. So we used to have failures within 40 kilometers of run,
Oh.
engine used to fail and we had to try a new engine. Now I had got that experience uh, earlier also, but the fact of the issue is that we didn't think the Vijayanta tank was fit for war. Nevertheless, since the Armative had all tank regiments of Vijayanta, and the Indian government was very keen that the Indian-made tank should be sent to war, we took our tanks to the western border for this fight, uh, knowing that these tanks are not going to run more than 40 kilometers. All right. Now, coming back to the war, the strategy of the war was very important for us to understand because Indira Gandhi wanted to go in for war in April itself because there were 10 million refugees. How long can you look after them when you have no money?
Mm.
Uh, Sam Manekshaw, as the chief, didn't quite agree with this view because he said that we are not ready for it.
Okay.
Firstly, it takes time to get an army which is in peacetime
Mm.
ready for war.
Mm.
And Indira Gandhi got after him to say that why the hell aren't you getting ready?
Mm.
You're the chief, get on with it. Why is the army not ready to go to war straight away? He says because we have so many demands which your various ministries don't pass. Everything is financial. So if we need, say, 1,000 trucks, those are not coming. You accept, the government accepts the necessity for the 1,000 trucks, but they don't have the money to give you. So you're not giving the money, so the trucks don't come. So with the result, the army is short of 1,000 trucks. If you want so many guns, against, they're not ready, or they have to be imported.
Mm.
So the army is not ready.
Mm.
Same with books, with equipment, with so many things.
Mm.
So to get the army ready, Sam Manekshaw suggested that, look, we have to wait a few months with all your departments of government and your financial side
Mm.
to open their purses and get us. And all our demands have to be met. Second point was that if you go in March or April, by June, May, June, the rains in Bangladesh stopped. And Bangladesh, as you know, is a riverine country. The huge rivers going through it. Not only is the Ganga coming there with its various distributaries, and the Bengal, both west and east, have the delta with huge rivers coming into the ocean. But you've got the Meghna, it's the Brahmaputra. The Brahmaputra comes around the Kasi-Gantia hills and comes southwards to the Bay of Bengal, mighty river. And the tributaries are there. So it's a riverine country. And to fight a war, when you're caught up by the monsoon, is not going to be successful. Sam also pointed out that, the Chinese are friendly with the Pakistanis. And if they fiddle the northern border at this time, when we are going to this war, then we require to take troops away to defend our northern border. That's the border of Arunachal Pradesh and Sikkim. So he said that we must postpone the war till the winter when the snows come down and the northern border passes are blocked with heavy snow. So it's not easy for a military movement, because military requires logistics also to move. It won't be easy for them to come across the northern border. And so therefore, the question is that you go in the winter. So he suggested December. He said that will give us time to get ready also. Anyway, Indira Gandhi accepted this. But in this period, she did 2-3 things which I want to mention. Firstly, she said that every department of the government of India, you have so many departments. You have transport, you have railways, you have food and supplies, you have the petroleum and other ministries, you see. And you have the other ministry producing clothes and things. This is whatever the army chief wants, you will supply, all of you. So find out from what you want and you get on with it. That Danda created a single-minded purpose in the government of India to get this military ready for war. It's not only the army, but the navy and the air force.
Right.
Second thing she did is she went to all the countries out abroad and got the unstinted support of the Soviet Union for her action. But the Soviet Union said, don't take more than 15 to 20 days for whatever you want to do in East Pakistan, because we can hold the Security Council with a veto for 1 or 2 occasions, or maybe 3. But after that, when it goes to General Assembly, we will not be able to hold it. So we don't want the United Nations to come against you. So we said, all right, we'll try our best. Now, while this preparation was going on, the general plan was that the main Pakistan army was